email problems. Then a few of them got hit with ransomware. Scott, my partner, who most people don't know, and how we became partners was he was my client for about 4 years, and we were helping him grow his business. Scott used to fly out with me to Vegas every year, and I like to say he got drunker than me at the conference, but every year. So our wives became friends. Me and Scott became great friends. Scott is probably one of the brightest IT people you'll ever meet as far as engineering, understanding it, to we represent people from Empire Beauty Schools, to Lufthansa Airlines on our IT side of the company, making sure they're safe and secure and they can run. And we've had people be hit with ransomware, none of our clients, that have met with us and it destroyed their business. Scott will really talk to you about it, but the one thing that made Scott and me become partners more than anything else was Scott's belief in customer service. So I couldn't be prouder to introduce Scott, who's been my partner now for 3 years. Our company will be Inc. 500, one of the fastest growing companies we just found out on the IT side. So congratulations to Scott. Scott, come up and talk to everybody. Here you go.
Thanks, baby. Hello. Ooh. Don't walk in front of the speaker. I'm sure they're going to adjust the volume on this in just a moment for us. So again, I'm Scott Fcasni. I'm the president of our IT support division. As Lance mentioned, we've been partners now for 3 years. Prior to coming on to 1SEO, the company that handles the IT support side was founded by my father in 1986. In 2001, due to a few medical conditions, he decided not to continue with the IT support side of the company. Then I took it over in 2001. And like Lance mentioned, it was quite a few years later. At that point, I used 1SEO for our own digital marketing. We hit it off really well, and at that point in time, we decided, you know what, we're referring enough people back and forth, let's just become partners. The IT support side of our company, it's all great if your business is growing, but you gotta make sure you're keeping your business safe. You can grow year after year, year after year, and if you're not keeping your customers' data safe, that business is going to disappear very quickly, and it could just be one small event that causes it to happen. Today, we're going to cover 3 different main topics. Attacks where hackers or maybe your competition is trying to come in and actually steal your data. We're also going to talk about how to keep your business protected online, your website. We'll give you a few websites that you can go to that do free monitoring and also free one-time penetration scans. And finally, we're going to talk about ransomware and what the difference is on those type of attacks versus the attacks where they're trying to actually steal your data. We'll get into a few more details there. And maybe we'll get past this buzzing noise a little bit later on too. $7.4 million is the average cost of a data breach. When it comes to ransomware, that number is going to be a little bit smaller. Again, we'll talk about ransomware later on. If your data is breached and they come after you trying to target your data, trying to steal your credit card numbers of your clients, or trying to steal your important company information that maybe is the reason why your company is so successful, the cost to recover all that data, $7.4 million is the cost of that breach. What's even scarier is that of the businesses that are breached, only 40% actually stay afloat after being breached and after their data is compromised and stolen. So more than one third of businesses that are breached with these major breaches don't survive that week. They end up just closing up their books. A few simple things you can do to prevent these major catastrophes from people from the outside, and they're really not all that complex if you want to try to handle some of them yourself in-house, is, of course, you're going to want to be very careful about opening up emails and email attachments. I'm going to get into a few examples later on because they relate a bit more towards ransomware, and talk about some of the latest scams that are going on. I'm sure most of you, if you check your spam folders today, you're going to see and identify with these exact same emails that are going out. Use browser extensions. Most antivirus software nowadays will have a built-in plugin that tells you while you're navigating the internet exactly which websites to stay off of. It might give you a big red X, it might give you that, or a nice big green checkbox. But if you get that big red X, it's going to make you think one last time before you click on it. These websites, these antivirus solutions that will warn you of the bad websites to go to, they're not expensive solutions, and they're one of the first things that you can utilize to help keep your company safe. Software for both hardware and software-based firewalls are very important. You may have some fancy antivirus software on each of your computers inside the network. That's not going to do a lot with preventing people from the outside from breaking in. If the only device that you have between your organization and the internet is a Comcast or Verizon provided modem or router, there's a really good chance that your company is not safe and can be very easily compromised. Make sure you go above and beyond. You have that Cisco firewall, you have that Datto firewall, you have some sort of hardware firewall in between your network and the outside. If you're logging in from the outside, make sure you're going through a secure connection to get into your company network. That's also something that we're going to talk about as we get to the ransomware section a little bit later on. Back up your data every day. You shouldn't worry every single day or week after week, what happens if my company is hit? You shouldn't have to worry about that. As long as your data is being backed up properly, let's say you did miss something and there was something that was breached from the outside. If you have a good backup, you're not going to lose 2 seconds of sleep over it. We're going to talk about some great backup strategies and also some really poor backup strategies that a lot of companies are using. And most importantly, you have a firewall. It logs every bit of activity that comes in and out. I'd say 0 out of all the clients that we talk to before they come on board with us actually look through those firewall logs. If you're not looking through the logs to see if, oh great, my firewall blocked 150 attempts from somebody from the outside from trying to get in. If you're not looking through those logs and staying on top of it, how do you know if the same company or the same person, the same hacker from overseas is trying to gain access to your data again and again and again? They try long enough, they may end up finding a way in. Going back to backup and some of the importance of backup, we try to live by this in terms of our clients' data. We want 3 copies of your data at all times. And 3, once we talk about the variations, it ends up being about 200. But 2 on-site copies. Your 1 copy on-site may be your server by itself. Your 2nd copy on-site is going to be maybe an external hard drive, like a network-attached storage device, or a backup appliance. But having only that external attached storage device is what gets a lot of companies in trouble. These external devices, one of the first things they do, they being the hackers, in the event that you do get compromised, what's the first thing they delete? The first thing they try to attack and go after? Your external storage. Because they know that you're not going to pay that ransom. You're not going to care about if the data is taken unless they encrypt all of it. So that's why finally we have the offsite option. With the offsite, every single piece of your data should be offsite too. Only you can determine how much important business data is actually used every single day, and only you can determine how often you should be backing up to the cloud. The reason why I mention that is a lot of companies will come to us and say, I don't ever want to lose anything. Okay, great, you don't want to lose anything. So we're going to back up your data every single hour to the cloud. By the way, you're going to be keeping a lot of copies of that data, so your costs might go up a little bit. Well, I don't want to pay for that. I don't want to have all of our data stored in the cloud every single revision. Okay, so what time period of data loss are you okay with? And some people will end up saying a day, some people will say a week, until they actually lose the data, then they come back and say, I'm okay with only an hour of loss after that. But only the amount of data that you're willing to throw away should you actually use that as your time window in between your cloud backups. If you're willing to lose 8 hours of data and you can compromise 10 or 15%, and you want just for a 10% savings on your backup, okay, then back up your data to the cloud once a day. If 1 day of data loss for your company is going to be a big deal, then you want to back up your data multiple times throughout the day. Most of our clients, we use a third-party device that does our backups for. We monitor it for all of our clients, but those backups are done hourly to the cloud. You just have to make sure you have a strong enough internet provider to get that data up into the cloud. After your breach, this is again talking more about the breaches where they're coming to steal your data, not necessarily the ransomware side of it. After you're breached, you want to really make sure you know exactly what was taken. Was data taken? Were they just trying to get credit card numbers and social security numbers of your clients? There's a whole black market for that online. Are they trying to learn your trade secrets? Or are they just trying to steal data to use some other kind of leverage against you or your company? Or maybe it's competition trying just to make sure you're going to have one miserable month or they come in and take your clients. The authorities, the FBI, the state police, Don't be afraid to ever reach out to them. No matter how big your company is, if someone ever comes in and steals your data, they don't care about the stuff that's on your server. They don't care if you haven't paid your taxes on time. They don't care about any of that. They want to know, is it this country? Is it that country? Is it this country? Is it that country? Is it this person that we have a record of trying to take your data? We have a good relationship with a lot of local law enforcement, and they do a really good job of helping narrow it down. We can only go so far. We can provide them the logs. We can provide them all the information we have, but we can't go behind the scenes and say, okay, that log came from this known hacking group out of Russia, out of China, Pakistan, wherever it may be. So they're going to help take it to that next level. Again, don't be afraid. They're going to come in and run a scan on your network. They're not trying to see what you're doing wrong. They're not trying to see if you owe the government money. They are truly there to help. You're going to want to take steps to prevent it from happening again, of course. And you always want to reevaluate your backup strategy. If it happened once, it's going to happen again. We're going to go into a bit about website security before we talk more about PCI compliance and ransomware. Your website, making sure that your website is secure, think about all the information that you collect on your customers. Maybe it's just their first name, last name, email address. Okay, well, there's a lot of lead information you don't want your competition to have. But then if you have an e-commerce website or a website where you're doing credit monitoring, or maybe you partner with another company that takes social security numbers, credit card numbers, you're responsible for all of that data. If you're accepting that data on your website, you're responsible for it. And there's going to be a few steps that you want to make sure you take to help ensure that that data remains safe. I mean, here's just some of the information. Something that is often overlooked. A lot of companies' websites will have like a separate website you go to, 1SEO.com/vendor-only pricing. Well, if you don't have that password protected, if you don't have that secure, maybe Google is going to index that. And the next thing you know, your vendor pricing is now out there for all of your retail customers to see. So it could be anything, and not just the client information or credit card information, your information that you think is secure. Oh, no one's ever going to go to 1SEO.com/vendor login, and the password is 1SEO, whatever it may be. Take the extra steps to secure everything. There's a lot of different steps you can take to help make sure that you're safe and secure. One of the biggest steps you want to take is make sure that wherever your website is hosted is on one of the newer servers that are available. So many companies come to us on both the tech and digital side of our organization, and they say, listen, we keep getting reports from our website host that our site's not secure. Why is it not secure? Well, you're running it off of a 2003 version server, and it's still up and running today. Microsoft's no longer providing patches and fixes. So if you're running a server that's 10 years old, the best security that you're going to get is what they patched 4 years ago. So there's 4 years of bugs and glitches and patches that haven't come out yet to your device. So make sure whoever hosts your website, make sure it's on the latest and greatest server. A lot of times if you host your website with WP Engine or any of the major companies, they're constantly updating all of your website and all of your security. But if you have a mom and pop shop hosting your company, there's a good chance that server is probably 10, 15 years old at best. And you want to make sure that you get your business information, especially if you're collecting credit card details, social security numbers, or anything else, and you get it off that server as soon as you can. Always keep an eye out for error messages, and use SSL. We're going to talk about SSL right here on one of the next slides coming up. A few steps to protect your website. There are tons of free scanning software that you can use. One of our slides will show you a bunch of websites you can go to that will do free scans. It's going to tell you not just the speed at which your website loads, which is helpful, but is it safe in the mind of all of the antivirus companies that are out there. Earlier I mentioned how a lot of antivirus software has that little plugin that tells you if your site is safe. Don't you want to know if your website is considered safe? We have companies that come to us, I don't know why, our ranking dropped, no one's coming to our site anymore. As soon as we try to do a Google search for their website, it's got a big red X on it. And that's because maybe WebRoot, we use WebRoot for our antivirus software in-house here. Maybe WebRoot is blocking it as not a known good website. You're going to plummet. The number of people that are actually going to come to your website is just going to drop. And that doesn't count the fact that Google is even going to start to put you down lower and lower on the list if your website is not safe, is not secure, is not using HTTPS or secure encryption for everyone to access it. Here's a few websites you can use to scan your website and make sure you're safe, make sure that your website is nice and secure. It's going to make sure there's no known vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities come out almost every day. Keeping your website up to date and patched is no longer a once a month strategy. It's your website host, hopefully, is updating it every single day. And again, companies like WP Engine that host your website do a really good job of patching these each and every day. Why SSL and what is SSL? When you go to a website, maybe you will get a notice before you check out from Chrome or Internet Explorer, and it says this website is not secure. It's telling you it's not secure, but it doesn't find something called an SSL certificate. A certificate can be purchased from one of 1,000 different companies. It doesn't really matter where you buy it from. You can buy it from GoDaddy. I think Google even has them now. And when you install that certificate on your website, it ensures that all browsing activity through your website is encrypted. What's the importance of it being encrypted? In the event that there is something compromised on the server, that server that's compromised, that's scanning this data, isn't going to be able to see in clear text the credit card, the social security, even the first name and last name. Having a secure website and having this SSL certificate is going to really help make sure that that's like the bare minimum security requirements you should have on any website. Google also, as I mentioned just a little while ago, is taking new ranking measures. Ever since July of this year, if you are not running an SSL certificate on your website, you will not rank as high as your competition that does. That applies not only to e-commerce sites, but even just a website where maybe you have a brochure website, just information about your company, an About Us page, a Meet the Team page, and a list of your services. So it doesn't matter if you're not selling anything, make sure you have HTTPS on your website across the board. If not to save your ranking, at least keep all your data safe. Again, we went over a few of these as we were talking. It's going to make you more credible. It's going to keep all your data safe. Just get that SSL certificate installed on your website. We can help you with that on either side of the company as well. PCI compliance. Any company that accepts credit cards is probably so tired of that annual report, the annual survey you have to take. What is the importance of PCI compliance? If you accept credit cards, there's a list of probably 200 or 300 questions that you have to answer as a business owner or whoever handles that for your company that talks about how you properly maintain and secure all the credit card information that comes in. Only part of it is your website. Once a credit card number is submitted on your website, if you do accept credit cards online, do you have access to that credit card number? If you accept a credit card on your website, and you as an employee of your company are able to see that 16-digit credit card number, you're not PCI compliant. You should not be able to ever see the credit card number on your website. Again, if you're able to see that credit card number after it's submitted, you're not abiding by PCI compliance. Once you submit it and the process goes through, there's ways with your merchant where you can charge that card again without having to see that entire credit card number. You want to make sure that you have your website set up properly, or even your internal practices set up properly if you take credit cards over the phone to help ensure that. If you're not PCI compliant, a lot of companies will let their merchant, whoever handles their merchant services, just fill out that form. They're going to attest on your behalf that you're PCI compliant. That's great. It saves the business owners, it saves a lot of people 20, 30, 40 minutes of time from filling out that survey. But guess what? If you are ever breached, one of the first things they're going to do is go back to your PCI compliance report. And they're going to say, well, according to this, you signed and you attested to the fact that you don't keep a paper copy of your credit cards. So forget even a digital breach. Maybe your storefront gets robbed or your business gets robbed. Well, you just signed saying that you don't keep a digital copy, a printed copy of your credit cards. But yet, someone just came in and robbed 700, 800 credit card numbers out of one of the drawers inside of your office. Because you signed, or your broker on behalf of you signed that stating that you are agreeing to all this stuff, there's a good chance that you're not going to have any kind of insurance to fall back on, any kind of protection to fall back on, because they're going to see it as you lied. Not that you omitted it or didn't know. They're going to see it as that you lied, and insurance companies never like to pay for much of anything. So it just gives them one more out. So take a quick time. Whoever your IT provider is, your IT provider should get involved every single year when you go through the PCI compliance to help make sure that you're keeping all the credit card information secure and that you have it all. It's a long survey, and we always dread when we see that ticket come in, because we know it's going to be a couple hours of time of us asking the business owner questions and learning about it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you're going to feel much more comfortable once it's done. And we're back. We talked about the overall. They're going to want to make sure that you have a secure network as part of your PCI compliance. They want to know how often you're updating your antivirus, your anti-spam solutions. They're going to want to know that you're constantly monitoring, like I mentioned earlier with the firewall for people coming in from the outside. And this is the part that is most commonly overlooked. They want a formal report. In this PCI compliance report, they want you to have a formal report that says what you're going to do in the event of a breach. Now, there's a lot of templates online you can use. You can use a standard template online. Hello? Okay. You can use a standard template online, but at least make sure you read that template. Don't just download a template online and assume that that works for your organization. Ransomware. This is something that is affecting more and more and more companies every single day. It's just absolutely crazy the new ways they come up with to get you through the door. It was funny, just this morning, one of our CRMs came up to me and goes, I got this email from Lance. And it said, hey, can you do me a favor? And then it said something else. I forget what the next sentence was. Please let me know. It wasn't really Lance who sent that email, although on a day like today, it would be something that he would probably ask, can you do me a favor last minute to help out? But they came over, they showed it to me. That's called spoofing. When somebody sends out an email pretending to be somebody inside of your company or pretending to be one of your friends or relatives, that's just an email spoof. I can send anyone in this room, if you give me your email address, an email from donaldtrump@whitehouse.gov. There's no problem at all. I can send it. You give me an email address, I can send it from that email. It's not an authenticated email, but it's going to come from that email address. Scott@fbi.gov, no problem. I'll send you an email from Scott@fbi.gov. Again, it's up to your spam filter. It's up to your protection that you have inside of your company to actually filter out those emails. Now, there's two terms. There's phishing and there's whaling. Phishing is what's considered, you're just trying to pretend to be someone else in your organization. Whaling is a term that's used when you pretend to be an executive out of the company and you're trying to get your own internal employees to give you information. Whaling is used very often this way. They're going to pretend to be CEO number one. And then they're going to send an email to probably not the administrative assistant, but that person's going to know the way the CEO sends emails. Maybe they're going to send an email to the CFO or to someone else in the organization late at night, and it's going to say, hey, CEO, are you up? So a simple question first. They might reply back and say, yeah, I'm awake, what's wrong? So now you have them captive, and the person's probably panicking, why is the CEO asking me at 10 p.m. if I'm up? The next thing they're going to say is, I need to get a wire out as soon as I possibly can. Can you help me with the wire transfer information so I can get a wire out? So you may send that information. At that point, you may be laying in bed, you're sleeping. Now, just having wire transfer information doesn't leave you at risk. You can look at the bottom of a check and you can see wire transfer information. But the next step is what gets a lot of companies. The CEO will then write back and say, I can't seem to get this working. Can you wire money to this account for me? I need it done ASAP. And you'd be shocked the number of times it happens. It happens again and again. You go to Walmart. I was at Walmart yesterday picking up some of these door prizes that were given out today. And right there at the return screen, I paid for it on my wrong credit card, so I had to go back and pay for it on the right credit card. I spent 45 minutes staring in customer service yesterday. So, but right there on that screen, it says, stop. Are you sending money to people that you don't know? It is a scam with a big exclamation point. Even they have to worry about it for Western Union. So that's one way you can get in with ransomware a lot. That's one way that companies are being are getting through the door. With phishing, they're sending you these links. Maybe instead of asking you for wire transfer information, they're sending you a link that says, click on this link. Can you look at this PowerPoint presentation for me? You're going to click on the link. You think it's from your CEO. You think it's from your business colleague. Next thing you know, you go to install that software, and it can possibly encrypt the data inside of your computer. The most recent scam that's going around, So we'll show a list of all the companies that were hacked. Target, Home Depot, PNC Bank. The list goes on forever. Companies that have millions, if not billions of dollars in IT security budgets. When those companies get hacked, they get your password. Let's say your password was not a very good one, 123 ABC. Well, right now, the most recent thing that's happening is people are sending out emails from overseas saying, my name is blah. Here is your password, ABC123. Maybe it's your kid's names, your dog's name, whatever it may be. If you check your spam, I guarantee that 80% of you have this email going on right now. They know what your password was because they got it from these other breaches. So but they say, listen, we have access to your computer, which is a lie. The only reason why they have your password is because they got it from that Target breach and it's all being sold on a black market. But they say, we have access to your computer. We see the websites you're going on. They usually insinuate the worst case scenario websites. But we see the websites you're going on. We see what you're doing during business hours. We see that you're on Facebook during the day. We see that you're on Match.com and you're not being loyal to your spouse. They tell you those kind of things. And they say to you, if you don't pay us $300, $600, $800 in ransomware, we're going to tell your spouse. We're going to tell your boss. We're going to show the video that we have because we've been recording you, they're going to tell you on your computer. It's all a lie. None of that happened. They just have your password, but they're making hundreds of millions of dollars off this right now. And this scam's only about 30 days old. Who does it target? It targets everyone. It targets home users. It targets business users. One thing to remember about home users, even if you're at your own house, the number of times that I've gotten a phone call personally with someone in tears, whether it's their home or business, if they're keeping their kids' photos, someone will call me in tears. I have my 6-year-old son. It was so hard for us to have a child, and now my computer is encrypted with ransomware. How do I get all my pictures back? I have 6 years of my child's history on my computer, and it was encrypted. There is no way to get it back. If you don't have a backup of your data for your home or your business, that data's gone forever unless you choose to pay the ransom. I'll tell you tons of reasons why not to pay that ransom a little bit, but sometimes we understand you may have to pay that. If you do ever have to pay that ransom, pay it once and then fix your problem so it doesn't happen again. 43% of all cyber attacks target small businesses. They know that they can definitely really hit home on a small business. They know if they encrypt all of your customer information, there's a good chance they're going to pay that ransom. What they usually do, one too many. What they usually do is they will start off by saying, you have to pay us $800 in Bitcoin. For anyone that doesn't know what Bitcoin is, it's not like going to the store, swiping your Amex, giving someone money, and then calling American Express and saying, listen, I want my money back. When you send someone Bitcoin, think of it as you're in a dark alley, blindfolded, handing someone cash, and you give them a 20-minute head start to get away. That's how Bitcoin works. Bitcoin, it's like PayPal where you send it to their email address. You're sending it to a 26-character alphanumeric string, letters and numbers. That's how someone's identified in the Bitcoin market. So they want you to go to the bank, go to Western Union, or in some cases, go buy Apple gift cards. And then they're going to just take your Apple gift card numbers and apply it to their account. And they're going to buy something before you can even try to use the gift card yourself. If you have a good data plan, if you have a good backup strategy, you don't have to worry about if you are hit. You only have to worry about the amount of time before the amount of time it takes you to get all your data back up and running. Again, that's all determined on your backup strategy. Real quick, as we're wrapping up to the end here, this is a list of all the companies that were hacked. So when I mention that they have your password, there's a good chance that most of you, if not are involved with at least one of these, probably multiple of these. Many of these were part of a password breach. So you can go onto websites and find out who has your password, but I'm sure there's not a person in this room that at least has one of these companies that they had their login name and password tied to at one point in time. What we covered, no business is safe from hacking. No business is safe from ransomware. Make sure you have a great backup plan in place. Most importantly, make sure that you get that backup, that data back at the time that is good for your business. If you can only deal with 8 hours of downtime, make sure your IT company knows I can only be down for 8 hours. If 1 hour is your threshold, make sure you let them know. We have solutions in place that can get your business back up and running in as little as 8 minutes. Even with the absolute worst catastrophe, where your building went up into flames, you can be in a virtualized environment in as little as 8 minutes with less than 1 hour of data loss across the board. I went a little bit longer, so I might not have too much time for questions, but I will try to answer just a few. Yes, sir.
So many of my clients are small businesses that don't run with servers, just desktops. How vulnerable are they, and is their strategy different?
They're actually more vulnerable. So a server is going to give you authentication that's going to make sure that you are truly who you are. With a desktop, just a plain desktop computer, get away from that speaker, with just a plain desktop computer, you don't have server-side authentication, which is going to be a more secure level of authentication. So if we have a key in the back of our office here, when someone gets locked out of a computer that's not tied to a server, I have one just like a USB key, we've all seen it. There's not a single computer, if it's not tied to an office, that we can't get in less than 2 or 3 minutes without this $15 key. So that's called a peer-to-peer work group. If you're a peer-to-peer work group, you're probably the most vulnerable, because there's just not enough security behind the scenes tied to a server. There are steps you can take, though, to make sure you are safe. If you come see me, I'll give you some ideas. Yes, sir?
Is the ransomware and the hacking, those phishing, is that done automatically, or or is there somebody literally looking at you individually?
It's usually they're scanning the internet for those known vulnerabilities. If you have a firewall, if you're safe, if you're secure, you have a good spam filter, they're going to move on to the next person in line. It's all automated. Ransomware is now as a service. You can just go online and you can buy a list of companies that are vulnerable from other hackers that have gotten in successfully, and you can buy a list of other companies that are vulnerable. It's crazy, the stuff you can buy online.
And the hacker's an individual?
They're individuals. They want their commission. They want that money. It's all about the money. $800 in these third world countries goes a lot further than $800 for us. So, yes, sir.
Why don't FBI bust those hackers' convention? They have it every year, and then they do it.
I'm willing to bet that the people at these conventions are probably not the ones doing this dirty work day after day. They may have written this software, but why don't they? There's a lot of extradition rules and laws. That question comes up all the time. Oh, I can't wait to find out who did this. I want to make sure that they pay the price. And then these big Russia hacks that happen, and they hack Home Depot or whatever it may be, they can never actually find the person. So, because if they do find them, they can't get them out of the country anyway. So, thank you so much. If you have any more questions, stop by and ask me. I'm bringing Lance back up here. I ran just a few minutes behind. So, thank you so much.
Who here has ever heard of SEMrush? All right, so a lot of people, right? So I'm fortunate, and the lucky about our space is everybody here in our space is great. You know, I got to meet Maryna probably about 7, 8 years ago, and I've gotten to watch what she's done at SEMrush. She's probably one of the strongest women leaders in our space. She's an amazing human being. She knows about digital marketing, and what SEMrush does, just so everyone understands that doesn't know what they do, is they are a tool where you can go see what your keyword volume is, see what people that you're competing against, see what they do. There's so many things this tool does that's amazing, from social signals to SEO, from PPC. And I watch it evolve and evolve. And I'm fortunate I've got to watch Maryna speak now at least 100 times at different conferences. And you're going to be in for a treat here, because she knows what the tool's supposed to do, how it works, and how it can help you. And I asked Maryna to come here and speak because Marina's probably, I'm going to say, as a woman leader in our space, one that I look up to more than anyone. And I believe in diversity huge. And as soon as I reached out to Maryna, she said, no problem, I'll come on. And I appreciate Maryna from SEMrush. I don't think she's mic'd up yet, but it looks like she's coming up. Let's give it up for Maryna, because you got a pleasure here. Last name, but once again, the slur will kill it, and I'm not going to do it to you.
Here? Thank you. Hello, everyone. Hello. How are you doing today? Very good. Excellent. I'm so excited to be with you today and share some information about SEO 2019 and where everything is going. I think Lance did a great overview about myself. I have been responsible for SEMrush operations in the States. I was one of the first employees who joined, and actually our office just 20 minutes from here. And now I lead global expansion of SEMrush. And for those that don't know, SEMrush is a well-known marketing tool, and we help you drive traffic to your website, as well as give you some tools to ensure that you get more traffic. And now, I have so much information to share with you, so I'm going to dive in. But before I do that, thank you, 1SEO, for having me. Thank you, Lance, so much for having me. It's my great pleasure to present. Have any of us been in this situation where we are so focused on our phone that we don't really know what is going on around us? I certainly was, and it's not once. And the trend has been obvious. And we being in SEO know that more searches already have been conducted on mobile than desktop. And this trend is just going up, as you can see. These days, everybody is on mobile. You might be thinking that mobile doesn't apply to your industry. However, even on the lowest end, as you can see, over 40%, about 40% of searches are done on mobile for banking. And this number, of course, is significantly higher for an industry such as food and beverages. And it's logical. We are always on the go with our phones, and we try to find something to eat or to drink, and search comes very handy. I can make the slides available to you afterwards, because I know some of you are trying to take pictures, and I have a lot of slides. I'm happy to send them over. But we are not just conducting searches. We are also making purchases. Just take a look at what happened in the last 2 years. The growth of sales on mobile are 30 billion. And currently we're at about 90 billion, and this number is going to double in the next 4 years. And if we are not on mobile, we lost our game. And we know it by now. And the more mobile friendly you are, the more searches you should expect. As you can see, South Korea is on the top, and the mobile friendliness for them is really high, about 95%, and that is why they have more sales. If you look Russia, it's down there. The mobile friendliness is lower and less sales. But I feel mobile have been something that we have been talking for the last few years. And I'm here to tell you that there is a big shift going on. Mobile first is where we have arrived. AI first is where we are going. Just think about it one more time. This is the trend for artificial intelligence. And you can see this is $1 billion business, and there are more startups. And of course, Google have been investing in artificial intelligence. This is the quote from Google CEO. I'm sure everyone can see it, that basically AI is the future. About a few months ago, Google released a video when their personal assistant is already able to book appointments for us, speak to our parents, our friends on our behalf. Probably some of you have seen it, but for those that haven't, here's a clip. Can we have sound? Okay, let me start over.
So how can I help you? Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second.
You wouldn't ever tell that this is personal assistant, not just human, right? And we all interact with AI on a regular basis. Here how we can put mobile and AI together. When we do predictive texting, as well as voice search, personal assistant, navigation, we're using AI. And also, Google has been making a lot of efforts into ensure that we are getting as users the best results when we conduct searches. And it's using artificial intelligence. It's using RainBrain, and we'll speak about that. So my goal today is to share with you mobile first how we can leverage everything that has been happening, and especially I'm going to share with you the latest updates, the biggest updates that happened in 2018. And then we'll speak about AI in machine learning and then voice search. Sounds good? Yes. Excellent. When it comes to mobile, first is mobile first indexing. And I think everyone, most of us have known about this. But Google in the past was looking at our website from desktop perspective, and all the rankings were coming from it. But now it's mobile, structured data, SEO tags, as well the context of your website plays a role on your rankings. And basically, Google is looking at your mobile version of the site. And some of you have received this email. How many of you have received this email already from Google? Any that your website has been switched to mobile first indexing? No? Okay, there have been already a lot of different websites switched. And basically, what does it mean? That if you are not fully prepared for mobile first indexing, and you have a separate version of the site, you may lose a lot of rankings. Your crawl path may be broken, navigation may be off, structured data may be missing, content may be missing. Let me share a couple of examples with you. Here we are looking at a travel blog. And you can see they have about 3,000 pages on desktop. However, only 2,000 pages on mobile. And even less of those pages are indexed, about 1,600. So about 45% of the efforts of this blog are wasted as soon as this website is switched to mobile first. Also, in order to get to the latest post on their blog, you would need to click 200 times. Can you imagine yourself clicking 200 times? I certainly have more important things to do, such as washing my cat. So they have a lot of issues on their blog. And they're so simple. Very often we pay attention when it comes to desktop. However, now we need to start thinking mobile first, then desktop. And it's not just this blog. About 6 months ago, I was looking at Sephora. And their website looks nice, the mobile version and desktop version. Very identical, and I love Sephora. However, when I looked at their technical aspect, they have 10 more, as you can see with their warnings and errors, 10 more warnings and errors than on their desktop version. It's crazy. And again, everything is very simple to fix. So here what you can do. It applies if you have a separate mobile version of your site, again. First, to ensure that you have content, SEO tags, and all the structured data the same. Also, conduct an audit. There are a lot of tools that would allow you to do that. Deep crawl, Botify, of course, my favorite, SEMrush, as you guessed. Just make sure to choose mobile agent there, so you will see all their errors on your website. Monitor your visibility on a regular basis. If you lose rankings, at least you will know that. And there are also a lot of rank tracking tools. And lastly, move to a responsive website, because it's going to be easier. This way you don't have to maintain 2 websites. Now let's discuss page speed. Page speed is a ranking factor from not too long ago. And we know probably that speed is important. And we assume that everything is OK with our website. Right? How many of us assume that we have great speed? Yeah, I see people nodding. But at the same time, at SEMrush, we conducted a result and test, and over 80% of websites out there have issues with speed. And this is a really high number. And if you look at Amazon, when Amazon speed changes just 1/10 of a second, Amazon loses over $1 billion per year. And speed has similar impact on your own website. You probably just haven't realized that. Over 70% of websites take longer than 7 seconds to load. Let us think, what is 7 seconds? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How many of us are going to wait for 7 seconds for the website to load? Not too many. Half of this room is going to leave if the website takes longer than just 3 seconds to load. 3 seconds. And where would we go? Of course, we would go to a competitor site instead. Good news for you. The issues that you're having should be easy to fix. Most of them are related to CSS, HTML, JavaScript. You don't have to know all these terms. As long as you have a development team, they can go to Page Insight by Google or something similar to SEMrush, like a sophisticated site audit, and you will see what errors you have with your website and how they need to be fixed. Most important thing is to understand that we need to take care of those issues. Then AMP, Accelerated Mobile Pages. How many of us in this room know of that, Accelerated Mobile Pages? Okay, a few of you. This is a new technology that Google developed about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and it makes pages faster. As you can see, 85% boost in page speed. I'm sure by now everyone has seen AMP, Lightning AMP logo. They appear in the search carousel, also as a regular blue link, and in feature snippets. I like to think of AMP as driving a Lamborghini, and Regular Pages as driving a bicycle. How many of you prefer to drive a Lamborghini? Yes, everyone. Your users want to do the same. They prefer to click at Accelerated Mobile Pages. There was a survey recently done when just regular users out of street were asked what type of pages do you prefer to click. Over 50% of them said AMP without knowing any technology behind it, only because they have better experience. And users spend twice as much time on AMP pages, and they see 20% increase in conversions in their websites. There have been already some of the biggest brands in the world using AMP, and some also smaller companies as well. Let me share a couple of case studies with you. Here we're looking at Thrillist. It's a publishing company. They turned into AMP 90% of their pages, and they saw 70% increase in traffic. And 50% of that they attribute to Accelerated Mobile Pages. Also, Chartbeat, this is our partner, they also conducted a case study, and they allow publishers to conduct content on their platform. And what they found out that when companies didn't use AMP, their traffic stayed the same, and with the usage of AMP, they saw 100% lift. A lot of also e-commerce businesses such as eBay, 1-800-Flowers have been using AMP. Here, a New Jersey-based company, Campmore. And after they implemented AMP, as you can see, their speed changed significantly. And here is the actual results. They saw search positions went up, click-through rate went up significantly, and bounce rate dropped. This is what actually we want, right? Yes. And with implementation of AMP, you can achieve results like this. So you may be thinking if you could use AMP or not. So if you're a e-commerce or a publisher, you can certainly consider using AMP. Also, if your speed right now of your website is low, and you can go and check it, then you can consider using AMP. Also, AMP still have its drawbacks. Sometimes the technology may not be there where we want it. And however, Google is improving it. So just to make sure it has everything you need. And lastly, if your competitors are using AMP. And how do you know if your competitors are using AMP?
Would they have like a little lightning bolt next to their site?
Yeah, but you can quickly check them. I'm going to teach you how to do that. Sounds good? You want to know? Okay. Some of you may be using a position tracking tool that shows how well you're ranking for specific keywords. Here I'm showing an example of a SEMrush position tracking tool. You just insert the keywords that are important for your business, and you will be able to see how well you're ranking compared to your competitors. And again, it's for your own business food. It's crucial for you for any location. So even if you have mom and pop business, like on a smaller scale, you can still use it. Actually, it's going to be very beneficial. And then you will be able to see also, as you can see, I highlighted the areas how well your competitors are ranking, as well if any of the keywords that are important to you trigger AMP pages. If you have a WordPress, CMS, or another widely used CMS, so there are a lot of plugins that you can use. Also, if you don't have one, your development team would need to put some efforts into creating AMP pages. However, most important thing is to have great user experience. Here are two websites. They look very different. However, it's actually not two websites. It's one website, but poor implementation. That is why they look different, but otherwise, you want to have your AMP pages look exactly the same as your regular pages. Content should be the same, as well as overall, your development teams need to follow the guidelines that Google provides. Because otherwise, there are issues. Over 70% of websites, after implementing AMP, learn that they have issues. This is based on our analysis. Some of them fixed it, some of them don't, but you actually want to fix it. So you can fix them using the Google just regular tool. It's absolutely free. Google provides it to everyone. Or also, if you use one of the site audits that I already mentioned multiple times, so you will be able to see as well if there are any issues with your AMP pages. So those were the two biggest updates, and I hope they would be helpful for you. At least you can get home and speak with your team and see if there is anything that you need to do to improve your page speed or to ensure that you're prepared for mobile-first indexes. And now let's speak about artificial intelligence. My favorite slide, you already guessed it, right? I put it twice there on purpose. And overall, when it comes to AI, it's all about intent. Google is getting smarter. In the past, when we conduct a search, Google compares the result that we use in the search bar with the text it sees on the pages, and then returns the most relevant results. But Google is getting smarter. Right now, Google knows that a car has different attributes. It could be different colors, different parts, different models, and it's getting much better in understanding what we as users want. Let me share a couple of examples with you. Here we are looking at an example of hairstyle ideas. Google is smart right now. It just gives me images, as you can see, because it assumes that I want to know how I want my hair look like. And if you click at one of those results, Google will return even more images back. However, if I type hair dryer, Google returns completely different results to me. And it assumes that I already want to make a purchase. Even the first result, as you can see, prices are there. And 7 out of 10 of the results have products. I click on one of those, as well as I will be able to see the hair dryer. I can place an order and see the description of the product. And there are 3 reviews, because Google assumes that I might want to know the best hair dryers in the market before I'm going to buy one. Next, straighten hair. Here are a lot of tutorials, a lot of videos, step-by-step directions how I can straighten my hair if I'd like to do that. And Google has been using RankBrain, that is artificial system, in order to help Google sort it through the results. I'm going to simplify it so we're all on the same page how it works. We as users conduct a search. Google may not understand exactly what it is. It's going to make an assumption, and it's going to return us the results assuming this is what you want. However, sometimes you may click back, and Google is going to give us a semantically related results similar to what we see here. Oops, it's moved. Probably I don't have this slide right now, but you probably saw a lot of other words that are very similar to your query, because Google knows that probably you want one of those, and you can click on them. So this is how approximately it works, but let us think about how it affects our rankings, our website, because this is what we care about. Am I right? Here we are looking at the same hair straightening example, and I click on the result number 1. And I don't like what I see. I think very generic information doesn't really answer my questions. I wondered why Google is ranking it there. If more users don't like the result they see, very likely Google is going to rank it lower, this exactly result. However, I go to result number 4, and wow, I have a lot of videos, a lot of step-by-step directions how I can straighten my hair, and have 5 ways to do that. Probably more people find this result useful, and Google is going to rank it higher than. So it's because of our behavior as users. And it's all about user signals that we have. Actually, at SEMrush, we conducted a ranking factor study to prove this with data, because there are a lot of discussions in the industry going on. Does it matter or it doesn't? So we conducted one of the biggest ranking factor studies in the industry. And actually, our behavior, user signals, is the second most important to direct traffic. Here we are looking at the bounce rate. When people just looked at one page on your website, as you can see, bounce rate is lower on the position 1 to 3 and goes up. So there is negative correlation between bounce rate and your rankings. Usually the bounce rate on the first couple of positions is around 49%. You see two graphs there because we were looking at performance of different keywords and how websites show up there. Some of the keywords have higher volume, some of keywords have lower volume, search volume. How often users search for those keywords. However, the trend stays the same. Bounce rate is important. Also, here we are looking at time on site. How much time users spend on the website. As you can see also, usually users spend more time for the websites that rank higher. And lastly, page per sessions. On average, users spend between 3 and 3.5 pages for the first couple of positions. And you can see the trend that just goes down. That is why it's important to maintain the users, keep them engaged on your website. Because the next big question we'll discuss, how can you optimize for this? And I know, we have been discussing about content, we need to create it, because content helps. It's one of the things that you can do in order to keep the users engaged and in order to ensure that you're ranking well. And again, there are a few things that you can consider while creating content. Because one of the things that you need to do is to understand user intent while you're creating content. At SEMrush, for example, we're going to go through straighten hair example. And you can see other keywords that are related to that. We are looking at currently topic research tool. And you can try to Google things and understand what is the intent of users because you want to satisfy that intent. But another thing that you can do, you can actually see in topic research what questions are users asking. If you quickly glance at those questions, this is related to straighten hair, you would understand that no one is looking to purchase anything. Users are just looking for help. They want you to teach them how they can straighten their hair, advantages, disadvantages, and many different ways how they could do that. Also, after that, you just have a headline that resonates with users. Because the last thing that you want to lose them after they arrive to your website. And at SEMrush, we also, in the same tool, you can see the headlines that are very popular in relation to the keyword that you want to rank for. And lastly, we also offer semantically related keywords that we discussed in the past, so that you can consider also including them in the copy. And there is also a direct correlation between the content length and your rankings. So the longer the pieces of content are, usually the higher websites rank, those pages rank. I'm not saying that you just could put anything and you will be ranking higher. Again, it's about you creating the content that will help users solve their problems. If you're not doing that, nothing is going to help. And actually, many of us think that we're creating the best content in the world, but it's not the case, unfortunately. Here are the stats based on the SEMrush. A lot of content is duplicated, and there is also low text HTML ratio. The count of the words is not very high. So all those issues exist on the market. Because in the past, I know we have been focusing on quantity, not as much as quality. But there is a big trend happening that right now we can combine like 3 different pieces of content and create one. Have like better tutorials for our users so they can quickly understand how they can do certain things depending on what type of industry we're in. And also at SEMrush, we have another tools that I want to share with you that it makes content writers' life easier. Because also based on our study, one of the biggest problems that content marketers are facing is combining creativity and creating SEO-friendly content at the same time, especially the one that would also rank higher. And we decided, how can we solve that? And we created SEO writing plugin that allows users to see how other websites are performing for specific keywords they want to write about, how long the content specifically should be, also what keywords they need to include, what backlinks, as well as how long should be the piece of content and the readability score, and then we give overall score. And then as you type the content, any piece of content, it's going to change life, it's going to change your score. So we made it so easy for content writers. So those are the main things that we need to know right now about artificial intelligence and machine learning. Of course, this is like a huge topic. You cannot cover even in one presentation. But I think in relations to as a big trend, so hopefully that was helpful to you. And right now, let's discuss about voice search. How many of us use voice search? Everybody. How many of us optimize for voice search? 2, 3. Okay. Okay, voice search is about natural language, and right now, more of us have been using voice search. And you guys have proven this point. Most of you have raised your hand saying, yeah, I use it. And it's not just younger generation, but also people in their 40s and 50s have been using voice search, as you can see. And the thing is that we are not just using voice search, but some companies already started making money on this. And you can see the data for 2017 and about 8 years from that point. How big is the difference? Because there we are looking at voice commerce sales. And if we don't invest in voice search right now, it may be late afterwards, because our competitors will be doing that. Currently, more than 20% of us use voice search, and the number of users will be higher. It will be about 50% in the next couple of years. And how do we interact with our devices? We usually ask questions, such as, who is the richest man in the country? Or where can I buy a cake? And it's logical. The number of questions, phrases that have been asked went up, as you can see. And what do we expect? We expect direct answers. We don't want to go through all the results. We want just Google tell us the results.
Okay, Google, what does a pig sound like?
This is a pig.
Hey, Google, can you put us in the computer?
Sure, no problem.
There are many ways how you can optimize for voice search, but I'm going to cover 2 of them. First is feature snippets and schema. Feature snippets is actually the result that is above position 1 that usually answers your questions, and schema is the content that you provide to Google, so it's better understand the context of your website. Here we are looking at, okay, it's back. So as you can see, usually when it comes to feature snippets, you don't actually have to click on anything. It will be something, what is latte macchiato? And Google is going to give you an answer on the top. Sometimes it's like a list, sometimes is as a paragraph. And usually feature snippets come from the content that is already ranking quite well, from position 1 to 5. And that is why if you have content that is already ranking really well, then you can try to optimize for feature snippets. And currently, about 40% of all the results trigger feature snippets. It's definitely a high number, 40%. So how can you optimize for feature snippets, considering the fact that Google is going to read very often the results it finds from feature snippets? First is creating content in paragraphs. However, making it concise. We at SEMrush also conducted a research. How long are usually feature snippets? Considering their different form. They could be as a paragraph, as list, also as table. So a paragraph, as you can see, the average word count is 44 words, and it could go up to 108. So if your answer is between 40 and 60 words, then you concisely answer the question, then it's very likely Google to serve it there. Also, when it comes to table and lists, as you can see, there is average number of results. However, there is also a maximum. But there is a trick there. If, let's say, the maximum number of items for a list is 8 and you have 20, then users may be very compelled to click on your website. In addition to gaining also a feature snippets there, you can gain a click to your website. So just think about this as well. Oops. Then you can also include images next to your text. And lastly, just have a Q&A section. Because questions and answers section could be at any website, and it's so easy to create. And now I would like to teach you how you can actually find the keywords that you can optimize for feature snippets. We are looking at Keyword Magic tool at SEMrush. And here I was typing caipirinha, because I just came back from Brazil. I love Brazil. It's one of my favorite countries. I speak there a couple of times per year. And the first time I went, all my Brazilian friends said, you need to try caipirinha. And I said, okay, caipirinha, what is caipirinha? So they said it's a national drink, very popular. When I came to Brazil, I started searching for caipirinha. And if someone would like to target me as a business, as a user, this is the process they would go through. This is how they would find the right keywords for which they could optimize in relations to caipirinha. As you can see, feature snippets, you can choose all the keywords that trigger feature snippets, as well as then choose a filter what. That is, this way we will know all the keywords that have caipirinha in them, trigger feature snippets, and have a question phrase what. And here's me and my caipirinha. I got it at the end of the day. Now let's talk about schema. Schema is the additional code that you will put on your website that will make Google better understand what is the content of your website. Oops. As you can see, this is how the pages look like. There are no blue links anymore as we used to have them. Based on SEMrush research, about 95% of all SERP results have different SERP features, such as reviews, images, and so on and on. Actually, it varies for different industries. That is why you can go to SEMrush Sensor. If you want, write it down, because it's absolutely a free tool. And you can understand what is happening in your own specific industry, because the trend will be different for publishers, for e-commerce businesses, and so on. And one of the ways to optimize for some of the elements is to use schema. And if you go to schema.org website, you can find what is the right schema for you. As you can see here, if you use schema, you will appear in search carousel in both lines there. That organizational schema will help Google to understand more the context of your website and serve it in knowledge graph. The local schema is crucial because it's going to help a lot of businesses to get traffic locally. And most of the searches we conduct will have local intent. And actually, the good part that those users would be very likely to visit your business. And my favorite schema, speakable schema. Because now you can actually tell Google what to read back when a user is asking questions. Isn't it cool? Yes. And it's not difficult to use schema. As you can see, you just highlight the areas of your business on your website that is important for users to know, for Google to know that this is your address, this is your phone number. You use structured data markup helper, and Google is going to generate a code that you can put on your website. And of course, after that, you just test, use Google Free Tool, and validate also using Search Console that everyone has access to. In conclusion, as you can see, there are a lot of things going on, and the basic things that we are doing for SEO, they're still important. You need to still do keyword research, get backlinks, and some other items that we were discussing for years. However, when it comes to biggest trends, you need to think about how you can optimize for mobile, and here are the two biggest updates for you to be aware of, mobile first indexing and speed. Then, when it comes to artificial intelligence, think about user intent and how you can create content that would answer their questions. And lastly, optimize for voice search. And by doing that, as you can see, more and more of us are using voices, and there will be a lot of revenue going down in the future. So you can optimize for feature snippets as well as schema. And I would like to leave you with this quote. Be so good, they can't ignore you. I wish you a lot of success and prosperity in the coming year. Hope you will be able to adapt some of the strategies that I shared. Thank you so much for your time. I will be around and you will for another hour or so you can ask me any questions you may have, because I know I'm right on time.
We got a few minutes. Want to take a few now?
Yeah, if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask me. Yes, certainly. You can just email me. My email is easy. My first name, Maryna, with Y, @SEMrush.com. And also, this is a promo code. If you haven't been using SEMrush, right now, we don't have any promos on our website. We don't give them away. But I'm so special that I can offer you one. Because you guys are special. And I think you deserve one.
When you're managing keyword search, especially push with ads, are you consistently doing that with Google, or do you have to pay in those spots?
If you do Google ads?
So, for instance, when you're paying for special keyword campaigns in Google,
yeah.
SEMrush also provides that service. Are you doing it twice in both locations, or is it you're managing it for both kind of accounts? Yeah,
we will not be able to allow you to manage your campaign from SEMrush. You will be able to do keyword research, create your campaigns with the SEMrush, but then you would need to upload it to Google in order to manage your campaigns.
Nice job, Maryna. Thank you, Maryna. Nice job.
Thank you, everyone. Okay.
Well, I hope everybody learned from Maryna, because I do every time she speaks. Whoa. Okay, well, so the next person is, who here still wants to grow their company, what you're doing now? Who here wants to grow it? So this conference, I want to do something different. Every time I hear people speak, one of the biggest things is when people ask me, Lance, you got 130 plus employees, you know, you guys keep growing. Some of the best companies I see that keep growing, it isn't just about the main leader, it's about leadership in general. It's about leadership in general. So I'm up here next speaker to talk to you. First of all, I want to thank you for your service. I think everybody should, to Jamey, Ketler, and Beth, so thank you for your service. So I can tell you a lot of great stories about Jamey.
No, he doesn't have the handheld. He doesn't have the handheld.
Jamey's a captain in the military, the Army. Like Marine, he was the bodyguard, General France. Jamey speaks all over the country to military personnel about leadership and growing. We had this conference, I made it clear. I wanted Jamey to speak here. Jamey's from Florida. He lives in Florida. I said, Jamey, can you get some time off and come up? So I'm very fortunate to have Jamey Ketler here. I call him one of my good friends, but also a great leader and someone I looked up to come here and speak. Jamey Ketler, where you at?
Good, sir. You good?
All right. All right, how we all doing today? Well, first of all, do I have any veterans in the office or out in the audience today? A few of you? Okay, happy Veterans Day. Thank you very much for your service. All right, so let's get started. This is the fundraiser for Donald Trump today, right? Wait, is this the wrong presentation? Am I in the wrong spot today? Okay, so that was a little satire to start us off with. But today we are going to talk about leadership, okay, and how to lead millennials, Gen Xers, baby boomers, in the workplace, basically, okay, the diversity that we bring to the work environment today with that such a diverse culture in today's office, okay. So we've been talking about digital marketing all day today and talking about products and businesses and all that stuff. But what we really didn't talk about is the people behind all of that, okay? So that's a pretty important topic too, right? We can all agree to that, okay? So let's get started. So when I put that first video up there, I heard some people laugh. I heard a lot. I heard emotion, right? There was a lot of emotion, one way or the other. Probably 1/3 of the crowd cringed, right? Like, oh crap, this is the wrong spot for me. What am I doing here? Okay, another third of the crowd was probably like, okay, let me get my money out. This is the right spot. And then 1/3 of the crowd was like, what is going on? Okay, what's happening here? Okay, but either way, there was some emotion, right? There was some type of emotion that was solicited with just that picture, right? Okay, the picture and the political theme that came behind that. So why does that elicit such an emotional response? Okay, other than just politics, money, and President Trump. Okay, so we can all agree that there was some emotional response there one way or the other, right? Positive, negative, or something, right? Okay, so everybody here is in some type of business, correct? That's why we're all here, right? We're all here for some type of business, buying, selling, some type of marketing purpose, but that's why we're here, okay? So is politics okay in a business world? Some of us, that's what our business is, okay? Some of us, that's what we're doing. We're marketing to, there's a lot of money in politics, first of all, okay? Buying, selling, whatever the case is, there's a lot of money in politics. But we talk about political issues all the time in the workplace, do we not? Okay, but that's one of the rules that we used to follow those rules all the time. Okay, what are the 3 things you don't talk about in social settings?
Religion, politics.
Yeah, yeah, religion, politics, and money, really. Okay, I heard some other things, but sex, someone had brought up sex. But we see sex everywhere too, don't we? Right? Sex is, we can't avoid that. That's just everywhere, isn't it? It's in our face whether we want to see it or not. Okay? But 3 things we're not supposed to talk about in public. Okay, that was just, I don't know where that rule came from, but that's just what it was, right? 3 things we don't talk about. But somehow we talk about all 3 of those things. Religion, money, and politics, it's in our face no matter where we go. Okay? Especially in the workplace. Now, why is that important? We're going to talk about that. Okay? But what I'm here to talk about today is how do you all fit into that sort of space, okay? How do you all fit in there, and how do we work amongst ourselves, and how do we work with each other? Because just as that picture came out, okay, everybody's got some type of response to most likely those 3 things, okay? So if you can't figure out how to work with each other with those 3 things, you're going to have some problems in your workplace, okay? And it doesn't matter if you're the CEO or if you're just a regular employee, okay? If you can't figure out how to manage those things, there's going to be some conflict in your workplace. Can we agree to that? Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. The purpose is we're going to explain some of the challenges today. Okay, and it doesn't matter if you're the owner, the executive. Okay, it doesn't matter where you fall into that business model. Okay, these are important topics. Okay, because whether you want to talk about it or not, this is going to have an effect on your workplace. Okay, and one of the other things we're going to go through is we're going to talk about some of the generational gaps. Okay, with the cultures within those generations. Okay, and how that influences the workplace. Okay, because we haven't really talked about that a lot. Now, we laugh and joke about a lot of that stuff, but what does it really mean, and how does that influence us, and how does that affect us? Okay, because it really does. When we really sit down and look and think about it, it actually has a pretty telling effect on how that influences our workplace. And that first slide just sort of proved the point, because we all laughed or we had some emotional response to that picture. Okay, so this is really a discussion. Okay, I do a lot of speaking. I talk all over the country about leadership issues. Okay, so I'm going to present some concepts and I'm going to ask some questions. Okay, I talk about this stuff all the time. I talk to CEOs and I talk to little kids. So I have such a diverse audience, and I'll talk about anything when it comes to leadership issues. So there's really nothing that's off the table. I do ask that if you do have some questions, raise your hand, okay? Because that way it's easier, and then I can repeat the question so everybody can hear it, because somebody else probably has the same question, okay? And then with that, I do ask that, if I ask a question, some people participate. Just makes it go by a little bit faster. So let's get started here. A little bit about me. I served almost 25 years in the military. My first 12 years were in the Marine Corps, and my last almost 13 were in the Army National Guard. I've deployed all around the world: Operations Enduring Freedom, Iraqi Freedom, Operation New Dawn, Iraq, Afghanistan. I'm in the retirement process right now. I'm the Chief of Counterintelligence down in Florida. So I recruit sources, and I'm a military source operations handler. I went to college, got a couple degrees. And this is what we're going to talk about. Define some of the generations of people. Okay, and I look out in a crowd, and we've got, looks like a mixture of everybody. Okay, and this is pretty typical. Okay, when you look into the average workforce, we got a mixture of everybody, right? We're all inclusive. We've got everybody in today's office, right? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Some of the generations, some of the characteristics of the generations, some of the significant events that have affected these generations. Okay, we're going to talk about some of those examples as to why some of these people might think the way that they do, because that's important to understand why some people behave the way that they do. We would agree to that, right? Okay. So as we look up here, okay, where do you fall? Has anybody here never heard of the greatest generation? Okay. How about the silent generation? A lot of people sort of equate both of those two as one and the same. Okay, the baby boomers. Okay, I think everyone's pretty much heard of the baby boomers. Gen Xers, Millennials. How about Centennials? Has anybody not heard of the Centennials? Okay, Centennials, that's who's coming up after the Millennials. Okay, the Millennials, we've got Generation Y. Centennials are Generation Z. Okay, so what's your birthday? Where do you fall in here? Okay, the silent generation, the greatest generation, pre-1946. Not many of those folks still around these days. Baby boomers, 1946, 1964. Gen Xers, do we have any baby boomers in here? Yeah. Okay, we got a few. Okay, Gen Xers, how many Gen Xers are in here? Yeah. Millennials. How about Centennials? Yes, we got Centennials in here. I think we got some people fabricating their age too in the back. Thought I didn't see that. Okay, so there it is. There it is. There it is. 1997. Wow. Yeah. Till now. Right? Right? They're still being born right now. That generation is still being born right now. Okay? Think about that. Think about that. Okay, so here's some characteristics. All right, when we look back through time, these are some of the things, and this isn't my understanding of it. This is what researchers have come out and said, that these are some characteristics, okay? Now, whether or not this applies to everybody, this is just a generalization as to what some researchers have said about the characteristics of baby boomers. Okay, now remember, these are the people generally aged between 53 and 71. Okay? What was pretty interesting, 17% of the population did not get married. Okay? So that's not quite 1 out of every 5, right? So most of the people of that generation, they got married. That's kind of an interesting statistic, I thought, right? So most of the baby boomers, they got married. Most of our grandparents, right? So it's pretty unheard of for a baby boomer to be single the majority of their life. Extremely loyal. What else was pretty interesting is, I don't know if I have a pointer here. Let's see. Is that they don't adapt well. Okay? Did anybody see that commercial of the little kids showing up at their grandparents' house? And then as soon as they show up at the grandparents dump off all their devices. And then they try to get the kids, their grandkids, to program the phones and the computers. Does anybody remember that commercial? They see that commercial? Okay, so our grandparents, they're not very digitally savvy, I guess, right? Okay, so they're not changing as fast as our times are changing, right? So that might be a pretty legitimate one, I would say, right? Can anybody text their grandparents? I know I can't text my father. He has no idea what that is. I'll send him a message and say, hey, I'm on my way, and I just know I'm not going to ever get a response from him. Okay? So here's some characteristics about Gen Xers. Okay? Gen Xers, can I see a show of hands again? Okay, so this is what some experts say about you, or us, because I'm a Gen Xer. Okay? Entrepreneurial thinking. What do you think about that? Did we see the tech boom, the .com? Okay? But what was interesting is they also say they lack executive presence. So what happened to all those .com companies? Where'd they go? Some of them were pretty successful. We heard some folks, you know, Google was still around, right? Google was one of the first .comers, weren't they? They've been around, I think I heard they had their 20th birthday or something like that. Okay, so Google's been around for a while. But what's interesting, they say that the Gen Xers are the most effective revenue producers, most adaptable, the best managers, and best problem solvers. Okay, well, what is interesting about that, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, is the Gen Xers, they kind of have the best of both worlds. Okay, because they were pre-digital age and post-digital age. Okay, so any Gen Xers remember the days of the first cordless cell phones? Yeah. Remember those things with those long antennas? Okay. Yeah. How about the rotary phones? Anybody remember those rotary phones? I bet you the Millennials and Centennials have no idea what those are. Okay? So, all right, so here's some characteristics of Generation Y or the Millennials. Okay? So when we talk about social media, okay, and being tech savvy, these guys are sharp. Okay? They're very intelligent. Okay, but what's really interesting is if you look right here, okay, 6 out of every 10 millennials, 60% of them are probably not ever going to get married. Now that's a pretty sharp contrast when we look at the baby boomers, isn't it? Okay? Now that's pretty interesting. Now how does that equate if you're a business owner? What does that mean? Does that mean that they're more likely to invest in your company and stick around and stay? Are they there for the long haul? Or are they easily going to pack up and go someplace else? Are they establishing roots in your company? I don't know, okay? But that's an interesting statistic. Would you agree? Okay, 90% of the millennials will reside in or around a city. We're going to watch a video that's going to kind of poke a little satire at that. I'm sure you'll pick up on it. But that was pretty interesting. Okay, here's some characteristics about the Centennials. How many kids now, okay, have you seen, and I'm talking small infants, you see with an iPad? Who's raising your children now? And I don't mean like yours, like anybody individually, okay? But who's raising your kids now? Are you raising them, or is Google, or YouTube? iPhone, Google. Who's raising your kids? Okay? Fortnite, right? Okay, so here's something interesting, okay? They're motivated by security. The kids now, okay, they're motivated by security. And we're going to go through as to some of the events that drive that. And you'll understand why as we go through that. Okay, so I pulled these off of Google, okay? But these are kind of little satirical memes, okay? But I think we kind of understand, right? We kind of get why these are, you know, kind of tongue-in-cheek sort of thing here. We see the guy down the end here, he likes marshmallows in his cocoa, right? Talking about the greatest generation, 18-year-olds storming the beaches, you know, here on Veterans Day. What were the 18-year-olds doing back in the 1940s? What are the 18-year-olds doing today? I don't know if there's a comparison or not, but I mean, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. We were talking world wars in the 20s and 40s. Okay, so here's a job interview. You've got a millennial that's interviewing a baby boomer, okay?
Did I get the job?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Because you're a baby boomer and I am a millennial.
Ah, well, Melanie, I am overqualified for this job.
I don't know where you got this. We don't do paper applications.
I made it. I don't do the internet.
Okay, that is the third time you have said that this interview, and it also says so on this homemade job application.
There you go, champ.
I don't know what this is.
Everybody gets a trophy,
Don't
right?
you need a trophy anytime you... anything?
Oh, it's on. How'd you get here? Horse?
I drove. My car. I own it. After 8 more payments.
What?
How'd you get here?
I took an Uber.
Do not know what that is. I bet you're a vegan.
Yeah, because I'm not a monster. Your generation is afraid of black people.
Your generation thinks you are black people.
Oh, word. Look at who you guys voted for.
Yeah, that's right. I voted.
Touche.
This is the only way you'll ever own a house.
Learning how to text is the only way you'll ever communicate with your son.
All right, guys. Who took my Sheryl Crow album?
Gen X. You know what? You're hired.
I quit.
Dad!
All right, so there's a little satire there, right? But you notice how does the millennial get to work? How did he get to work? He Ubered, right? Because they live in cities. Why have a car if you can just Uber everywhere, right? So there's a sharp contrast even in, you know, possessive things, right? I'm a Gen Xer. I wouldn't even imagine living or trying to live without a car, okay? But for some millennials, that's an added expense. It just doesn't make sense. Like, why have a car? Why pay the car payment? Why pay for all the insurance? Especially, I mean, I live in Florida, but from what I understand, insurance is ridiculous in Philadelphia. Okay, so why pay all that additional money, you know, for something, a service that you're not going to use all the time? So that just doesn't make sense. Okay, so understanding some of these different experiences is going to help you, okay, as a business owner, as a manager. Okay, so understanding some of these things is really going to benefit you. All right, so let's look at some of the events that have shaped some of these generations. Okay, so we'll try to understand why some of these people think the way that they do. Okay, because that's really going to get to some of the outlying issues as to why they might behave the way that they do. So when you look at baby boomers, okay, we look at this list, okay, and I'll just give you a second to look at that, but what are some of the things that jump right out at you? Okay, try to think of big picture, overarching theme. Civil rights. Absolutely. Okay, these people got to witness firsthand some massive civil rights movements of our time, of their time, right? Dr. King, Rosa Parks. How about the assassinations of the Kennedys? Major leadership changes. Okay, these are major events that these people got to see. Okay, so do you think that had an effect on them and some of their thought processes? Now I know, what are the three things we don't talk about? Politics, money, and religion. Okay? Now, religion gets kind of strange, right? Because people will say, well, I'm not religious. Okay, or maybe I am religious. But what about values? What are your personal values? Okay, so whether you're religious or not, most people have some standard of values. So that's going to pull you into that sort of religion conversation, does it not? Okay, whether you're religious or not, most people have some standard of values that they put themselves in. Okay, so when we start looking at the civil rights movement, okay, that's a pretty big issue, right? So what are some of the implications? Okay, so the baby boomers were raised by parents from the world wars, okay, that went through the Depression. So a lot of the people that grew up in the Depression era, did they trust banks? Okay, so they had a general distrust of government, right? I can remember my grandmother wouldn't put any of her money in the bank. Okay, she would hoard it all around her house. Okay, like during Easter, I would go looking for Easter eggs in her house. Like, oh, look, I found $100. I'm like, oh no, put that back. Okay, go look in another corner, you know, look under grandma's bed. Oh, look, here's 500 more dollars. No, put that back. Okay, but there was just a general distrust of the financial system, okay, because of the Depression. Okay, so understanding some of those things. But the baby boomers, they really cared about people's rights. Okay, that was really important to that generation. Okay, so that's just something to understand about some of those folks. Okay, finally, with that, okay, they saw the whole Mccarthyism thing play out. Okay, the whole McCarthy, everybody's a Russian sort of thing. Okay, and at that point, there was a lot of, you know, spread of communism going on around the world. Okay, so the Americans just came out of these folks. Remember, all their parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles, they all just returned home from the war. Okay, many of them fought communism. Okay, or at least partnered, and then they saw what happened with communism. So communism was a terrible thing. Okay, millions and millions of people died because of communism. So, okay, there was a very anti-communism sentiment. Now, it wasn't just an anti-Russian sentiment, so don't confuse the two, okay, because communism is not always associated with Russian, okay, because we have communist China, we've got communist Vietnam, we've got communist countries, communist Cuba. I mean, there's communism everywhere, but most people just associate communism with Russia. So, communist is India, right, Central America, we've got, you know, Venezuela, so communism is everywhere, or not everywhere, but it's a lot of places, okay? So there was a big anti-communism push, okay, for the baby boomers. Gen Xers, okay, here's some significant events for these guys. Does anything jump out here? The Great Wall, I heard somebody say that. What was that the symbolism for? Freedom. We saw the fall or the symbolic end of communism. Okay, did it really end communism? No, it just kind of changed it, right? Put a new face on it. Okay, but that was the symbolic end of it. It's the symbolic end of the Cold War, right? We won that Cold War, right? Russia was gone and America is great, right? Everyone's waving American flags, right? Something like that, right? A lot of death, I heard somebody say. Okay. How about the rise of the personal computer? We saw technology change in this generation, okay? And not just change, and I don't remember what the exact statistic was, but I think we've advanced more every 10 years in this generation than we have every preceding 1,000 years. So when you look at how life has evolved, or human life has evolved, for every 10 years in this generation, we've advanced by like 1,000-fold. Does that make sense? It was just the technology is advancing and developing so rapidly that we're just growing by leaps and bounds with technology. So that's pretty amazing. That's generation. And we see a lot of terrorism, right? We see really the early stages of terrorist sort of development, right? Okay, so some of the implications of Gen Xers. Okay, they became a little bit skeptical of government. Okay, when we saw a lot of these events occur, they started questioning. They started asking more questions. What is the government doing? Okay, good or bad, but they're asking questions. Okay, somebody said they saw a lot of death. Okay, but the broader term is they saw a lot of injustice, right? We saw Rodney King happen. Okay, so that was a pretty devastating thing for a lot of folks. Okay, and when the police officers were acquitted, what happened there? LA riots. Okay, so there was a lot of injustice that occurred, not just in the United States, but around the world. Okay, and I talked about that bottom one. The Gen Xers really had the best of both worlds. Okay, millennials. Here are some of the events that shaped the millennials.
School shootings.
Yes, I heard it. School shootings. We're seeing the rise, the beginning of school shootings. Columbine, right? Columbine was probably one of the first ones that made it to national headlines. Definitely by far not the first school shooting, but as we look at the development of technology, okay, social media and how we receive the news, Columbine was really the first one, okay, that was published across the country and everybody heard it as it was happening. Okay, O.J. Simpson gave us the first sort of shock media thing, and the news agencies have learned to run with that ever since. Okay, and ever since then, we've got the mass shootings, right? Every time there's a mass shooting, we all know about it as it's happening. Okay, because we all have those digital devices right by our sides, right? And we've heard some statistics about that, and we're going to talk a little bit more about those statistics too. Some of the implications about millennials. Plagued by violence. Okay, does that surprise anybody? These millennials, and I mean, they're all adults now, but they grew up with this violence. They were the ones that were in the schools as their schools are being attacked. Do you think that's going to have an effect on them? Do you think that's going to have an effect on how they vote? Okay, but we don't talk about politics in the workplace. How about where they work? Do we see any workplace violence? Okay, these kids grew up with that. Terrorism overseas, war. Okay, we've been at war now for 20-something years. Okay, the global war on terrorism. Mass shootings. Okay, now the millennials, they really consider themselves social justice warriors. They want to get involved. Okay, we see the millennials, they're out there, they're protesting, they want change. Okay, they'll be the first ones out there saying, you know what, this has got to change. Okay, but they're falling short. They're falling short on a lot of different stages on how to make that change happen. And we'll see a little bit here. We'll talk a little bit about that. Centennials, here's some of the events that the Centennials are facing. How about that housing bubble? Can you imagine being a child and being kicked out of your house? Or seeing your friends kicked out of your house, or having your friends move in your house with you? As a child, that's got to be pretty devastating if you got to pack up and, you know, move all your stuff out of your house. Okay, when I was a company commander in the military, I was right before a military unit deploys. Normally you have an influx of new people that join your unit. Okay, and as I was getting ready to go overseas, I was getting an influx of new people coming into my unit. And one of the first things I would ask all these 18-year-old and 19-year-old, I'd say kids, but they were all adults, but I would always ask them, I would say, okay, why are you joining the military now? Because you know we're getting ready to go off to combat. What motivates you to want to do that? Why would anybody want to sign up for the military right now and willingly want to go off to combat? And I would say overwhelmingly, you know what the number one answer was? They remember when they were little kids watching those towers go down. Years later, years and years and years later, they told me that when they were old enough, when they had the opportunity to join the military, they wanted to make sure that that would never ever happen again. And at first, I was just like, wow. I mean, here at that point, I had been in the military for 17 or 18 years. I had chosen that profession, you know, and I was not an old dude, but I was older, okay? I chose that profession. But to see these young kids come in, like, it touched my heart. Like, how old were these kids when they're watching these planes go into the tower? So I was in Iraq in 2003 when, does anybody remember the prison Abu Ghraib? Okay, when the soldiers were holding up pictures of the Iraqi detainees next to dogs and stuff like that. Well, I was in Iraq when that was happening. And we had basically had Al-Qaeda decimated. We were winning the war. The war was just about over. I couldn't sign people up fast enough. Okay, they just couldn't. I mean, they were coming in by the thousands. Okay, that was such a disgrace for the U.S. military. Okay, and it was just such an embarrassment for us. Okay, but to the flip side, here it was, years and years and years later, we had these little kids that watched those planes go into the tower, still signing up, wanting to go off to combat because they watched those towers go into the plane, or the planes go into the towers. That's how much of an effect, okay, that had on those kids years later. Let's go back real quick. A couple of important issues. What are some of the overarching themes that we see here? Black Lives Matter. Okay, so this is all social issues, right? A lot of these are social issues. Okay, so the social issues are having a real big impact on today's young kids. Okay, and there's a big difference because they're affecting the millennials and the centennials at the same time, but there's a different reaction from the two groups. Okay, and the centennials, they want real change. Okay, as do the millennials. Okay, but the centennials, where they find a homeless person, a millennial, and this is, you know, broad categories. This is not, of course, every millennial, but a millennial will be more likely to hand a homeless person, you know, cash. A centennial is more likely to go and try and solve the world's hunger problems. Okay, so there's a big difference between how the two generations think. Where the centennials, they're trying to solve many of those problems. How can we have all these homeless people? Why is that? So let's solve these problems. Like, yeah, like this is just a symptom. The homeless guy is a symptom. What's the bigger problem? Okay, so what are some of the common challenges that we have in the workplace? So we talked about the generational differences, right? Okay, so we got all different kinds of people in the workforce. right? Baby boomers, Gen Xers, Millennials, Centennials, okay? So that's one of the big challenges, right? We've got a diverse workforce, right? Everybody's different. And we just saw why everybody's different, right? Okay? So can we talk about this stuff in work? Is that okay? How about freedom of speech? Do we have freedom of speech at work? If I work at McDonald's, can I hand somebody a cheeseburger and say, yeah, this is a good cheeseburger, but you should really go to Burger King? Can I do that? Well, don't we have freedom of speech?
You can, but you have to be able to accept the consequences.
Okay. So what about kneeling at the NFL game? Okay, everyone's quiet now. So this is one of those things, right? This is why, look, this is why we're talking about it, right? This is why we're talking about it. So these are some of the 3 things that we're not supposed to talk about at work. But these are really pretty important issues, right? So somebody might have lost their job over it. Should they have lost their job? If you're the CEO, how do you handle that issue? What if you're the employee that felt that you were being, discriminated against? Okay? Should you keep your mouth shut to keep your job? Or are you going to be one of the social justice warriors? Because now we see how some of these events have defined how or why we think. Are we kind of seeing where this is coming together now? Yep. Okay, so here's one of the ways that we can eliminate some of these issues, okay? Because you're not going to eliminate all of them, but one, you need to make sure you have a policy. What does your organization say about these things? Can you talk about it? Can you not? Can you forward emails about it? Can you not? Pretty important issue. In the absence of policy, what are you going to do? Okay, that's where every organization gets in trouble, when there's no policy. Because then there's no precedence. So then if you make a decision and you single one person out, okay, well then you just singled that one person out. What does the policy say? Okay, here's another important issue too. Once you have policies written out, okay, when you have leaders in your organization and you have managers, one of the things that the military prides itself on is everybody's a leader. Okay? Yeah, we have policies, okay, but in the absence of policy, okay, because not everything that you're going to come across in life fits right into a nice little policy. Okay? Not everything is going to be that nice boxed up, situation or circumstance. What are you going to do when that guy kneels for the national anthem? Okay, flip through the regulations, the manager's at a loss. Okay, well the manager says, well, I don't have a policy for that. Okay, the leader's going to step in and say, okay, well let's take a look at it. What are this guy's issues? Okay, what's this guy's problem? How can we help him? How can we solve his problem? Okay, leaders are problem solvers. Managers are problem solvers too. Okay, but there's a difference. Okay, and we're going to take a look here. So here's Leadership Without an Ego, a guy named Bob Davids. Take a look at this here. Now I know everybody's got, they should have gotten one of these. You're going to see why in just a second.
Hello. My name is Bob. I am a designer and an entrepreneurial businessman, and today I want to talk about management and leadership. The reason I'm here today is because I met Bob Townsend in 1980. Some of you may have heard of Bob Townsend, most of you probably haven't. He was the CEO that built Avis Rent-A-Car, and he wrote a breakthrough book in the 1960s called Up the Organization. Up the Organization is still the #1 book at the Wharton Business School on the must-read list. That's 50 years of being #1, so I suggest you take a look at it. It's really a book about leadership, culture building without ego. Bob Townsend walked into my office in 1980, and he asked me if I had 15 minutes. I said, of course. He said, I'm interviewing the management team because I'm going to join the board of directors of this company, and I always want to speak with the management before I do. Oh, please come in and sit. I looked at my watch, 15 minutes, not a problem. 5 hours later, he left my office. I was stunned. I had never been in the presence of that much energy. He told me about his book, Up the Organization. I hadn't heard of it. At 5 o'clock that night, I ran out to the nearest bookstore, and I got it. I read it from cover to cover that night. It changed my life. I had always had the same ideologies, the same thoughts about leading people. But his book gave me a structure, a framework that I could hang it on, and I use it as a guideline for the rest of my life, and I'm still using it. The same year, I was overlooked for a promotion to be the CEO of the company. I was in my 30s. I thought I was ready. The company didn't. Bob Townsend suggested that I further my education. That was a good idea. I says, well, maybe I'll go do an MBA. He says, no, never do an MBA. There's too many managers already. The world is short of leaders. We don't need any more managers. Managers, leaderships, I thought they were the same. I would hear people say, I manage 6 people. I lead a team of 6 people. Must be the same. 32 years later, I'm here tonight to tell you it's not the same. Management is control. In business, we call it the triple constraint of management. There's 3 things, and only 3 things, that you could control. You can control quality, time, and money. Whichever one of those 3 takes precedent, the other 2 will suffer. If quality drives your organization or your product or your service, the other 2 will suffer. It takes more time and more money to create the quality. If price determines your product or service, then you will have to give up the quality and do it much cheaper. If time, you have to do it in time. To do it quickly will cost you more money, and the faster you go, the less quality you will have. So control is the management, the interplay of time, quality, and money. So where are people? Well, people are come under leadership. There's a big difference. In World War II, Dwight Eisenhower was the Allied Supreme Commander of all the forces. He would train his generals. He would take a chain and stack it up on the table. And then he would ask the generals, if I push that chain, which way will it go? And he would hear a lot of answers. The correct answer is, you really don't know. But he said that if I took the chain and I picked it up by the end and I pull the chain, which way will it go? The answer is, it will follow you. And there is the essence of leadership. If you push the people down deep inside, you really do not know which way they'll go or which way what they're really thinking.
Okay, right? So this is your gift from me today. Everybody here is going to be some type of leader, worker, manager, okay? Keep this on your desk. Are you going to push or pull your folks? Okay? Are you going to be a leader? Okay, so that's my little gift for you for today. So as we go through the policies, we talked about, do you have one? Okay, that's going to be pretty important to know as you develop your organization. Okay, whether you work in an organization or you run it, what are they? Okay, make sure you know. It's important. Your people need to know it. They have to know it. Okay, that's going to be your left and right lateral limits. Okay, here's an interesting, you've heard statistics all day. Okay, but the average American uses or has access or whatever is online 5.9 hours a day. That just blows my mind. But I believe it, because I heard somebody say that the average person picks up their phone 200 times a day. Okay, so that 200 times a day equates to 5.9 hours. Is that just ridiculous? So what does your policy say about those three things? Religion, money, or what? Politics, right? Those are hot button issues. How are you going to talk about that in your workplace? Okay? Do you have a policy? Do you have filters in your organization? Can you access those things? This company, that's one of the things that they do. They're online. Okay? Most of your companies want to be online. So do you even want to have a filter? Okay? How do you manage those things? How do you manage social media? Because a lot of your businesses, okay, you want to be on social media. So it doesn't make much sense if you're going to filter social media, right? And why are those questions important? Okay, those questions are important because all of those people that work in these offices, they all have very different experiences, right? We talked about why those things are important to each and everybody in here. Everybody has different experiences that shape their performance in the office, that shape their decision-making processes, that shape whether or not they drive a car to work or they Uber. How many people would have thought that those things would have affected those decisions? Okay, but they do. Okay, school shootings affect your employees, whether or not they were involved, but it affects their decision-making cycle. As an intelligence officer, I try to get into people's decision-making cycle. It's called an Odom loop. Okay, I work very hard to get in people's decision-making processes. Okay, you need to do that. You need to figure out what motivates your employees. So here we are. We're at a time that people have more access to more information than ever before, right? Okay, but everybody's got their own different experiences. We've got a more inclusive culture. People have, I mean, I don't even know how many cultures are represented in here today. We've got men, we've got women, we've got young, we've got old, okay? We've got just all different types of ethnic backgrounds in here, okay? So we're so much more inclusive now than we've ever been. But we have to understand that. How does that affect or influence all of the people within our work organization? Okay, if you don't know how that affects your organization, you're going to struggle. You're going to have conflict, and that's going to ultimately affect your business. Okay, and if that isn't affecting your business or your employees, that's going to affect your sales. It's going to affect your customer service. That's going to affect your entire operation. Are there any questions? Well, my name is Dr. Ketler. I am from Tampa, Florida. I want to thank everybody for your attention. It's been my pleasure, and thank you for having me here today.